The best in the world, Ellie St. Pierre drove home to her first ever world indoor title. Now just a little bit of separation between her and Brea as she hits the line at 3:30 with a lap to go.
I mean, the story of this race with Ellie leading the entire thing once the pacer dropped off, and then once she hit the 3K mark, started hitting 69s, then 69, then 69, then 67, separating herself now from Brea as she goes into the final 300. Brea trying to see if she can keep any sort of closeness, but it's that speed, 1,500 meter comparison. Ellie St. Pierre sub 4 significantly, and Brea a 4:07 personal best. So over these final meters, it's all St. Pierre.
You have got to be kidding me right now. If I'm a 5K runner, or even worse, a 1,500 meter runner, right now I am shaking in my boots at the fitness that Ellie St. Pierre is showing us.
Well, Brea still giving up a pretty good fight here coming off the final turn, but Ellie St. Pierre in the twilight of a city of stars remains the brightest star in American distance running as she will cross the line in a shade over 14:34 as she will become the number 5 all-time in American history in 5,000s, one spot ahead of Shannon Robury.
Good work, St. Pierre. I love to see it.
Now officially 14:34.12. So it's Munson, Houlihan, Schweitzer, Cranny, and St. Pierre. And just note that Cranny's mark was an indoor mark, so number 4 outdoors all time. And Brea with a fabulous run, shattering her own personal best and national record for Venezuela by more than 10 seconds. For this women's 5,000 meters. See the trials qualifier and the Olympic standard. Sub 15-minute stretch down to 14:52 gets you at least an opportunity to make it. And Ellie St. Pierre, well, last we saw her was in Glasgow in a breakthrough performance, winning that World Indoor Championship in the 3,000 meters. And now she sets her sight on another trip to an Olympic Games.
Just a phenomenal season for her in the indoor circuit. And her son turned 1 the day after she won her medal, which was just icing on the cake, as she now goes into the 5K to be kind of testing out where her strength is as she opens up this outdoor section of her 2024 year.
And a happy belated Mother's Day.
Oh, yes, thank you.
To you, Shannon, and to all the mothers out there, but specifically to our track family.
Yes, exactly. We got some great mom performances tonight. I love to see it.
Well, right out to the start, Gemma Finch, who's the pace setter, has only one person in tow as St. Pierre goes out aggressively here in the early going. A lot of star power in this race, and we'll get to some of the other introductions as the race unfolds here. But I mean, what impresses you the most about? And when I talked to Kara Goucher in the lead up and then into the World Indoor Championships, what she was saying is just how quickly St. Pierre was back into top form. That she had talked, and maybe Shannon, you're the best to respond to this, is like it takes time after giving birth. And were you surprised to see her performing so well?
You know, I think yes and no. I mean, clearly she and her coach Mark Coogan had done a great job to ensure that she could recover from her pregnancy and come back on the scene really in that 9 to 12 months postpartum, and just come home with a world championship with American records. It was just highly impressive. I think seeing her tonight in this 5K, it's exciting to see her out there, right, just going after the pace. And, to get the standard for the 5K for the Olympics, 14:52, I mean, there were just 5 years ago or so, breaking 15 was a big deal, right? And now the Olympic standard is sub 15, even to, be guaranteed or have that automatic qualifying time. And we see in the field, the pacer has kind of settled into that pace. St. Pierre is right on her back as well, but the chase pack is now cut up as we're all strung wide. And a large field that we have of athletes here, about 18 of them, plus the pacer in this 5K tonight.
Yeah, Paul, I think what you were referring to was, because I was as amazed as you, seeing Ellie St. Pierre on the start line at the Fifth Avenue Mile. So if my math is correct, March is the 3rd month, September is the 9th. So a mere 6 months after giving birth, she was out there racing with some of the best athletes in the world, charging down Fifth Avenue. And yes, I have no reference, no basis for saying how that is, but I'd say she transcends mere mortals. She is a super mom, and we all are just in her wonder.
Well, she was inspired, I bet, by Faith Kipyegon, her daughter is around the same age as mine, around 5, turning 6, but goes on to set the world record. So clearly, anything is possible.
Absolutely. In this field, again, for American fans, we have the who's who of distance runners. We have Elle St. Pierre out front, right behind the pacer, with Whitney Morgan, Ali Bukowski, Taylor Werner, Ali Rodenfels, Ella Donahue, Ellie Hennis, Bethany Haas, Abby Nichols, Catherine Wasserman, and Erica Kemp. I mean, this could be our Olympic trials final right here.
When you look at the pacing, I mean, the pacer was supposed to run 71s or so. Our first lap was spicy. That's why St. Pierre was only with the pacer. They ran about a 33-second first 200, so that's quite under the prescribed pace. Then settled into a 73 to kind of get back on the split that they wanted to. That last lap was a 71, so now they seem to be dialed in as the pacer is with the pace lights and the field is just clipping along.
2:58.44 for those following the K splits here, so we'll keep an eye on those Ks and if they stay steady or not through the race. And again, the pacer in front helping, that is Finch, but also those wave lights as well.
We've got athletes like Jocelyn Brea from Venezuela taking the opportunity to come to the U.S. to get this great race here at UCLA's Drake Stadium. Does not have a 5K best on the season, so her 5K personal best is 14:47. So she's obviously got the chops, but she's trying to find out what type of form she's in right now. Again, as we've said time and time again on this broadcast, for our pros, this is still quite early in the year. You know, we're knocking on the door of the NCAA championships, but for the professional season, the timing is just a little bit different, Paul.
Reminder of the standards here. The Paris Olympic standard, 14:52, and for the Americans in the field, if they do not have it yet, need to be better than 15:10 to be afforded a spot at the Olympic trials coming up in 6 weeks' time at Hayward Field in Eugene. 5 minutes elapsed on the clock.
And only Ellie Hennis has the Olympic standard so far in this field. So everybody else of these 18 athletes, and actually it looks as if Gemma Finch of Great Britain is a DNF, so she has dropped out. But the rest of the field is now all in line, clearly committed to trying to get that 14:52 time that was set, or get that Olympic standard.
8 laps to run here on the track. When they get to the far side of the track where they originally started the race, we'll hit 2K into this race.
I would say it's a hard task for St. Pierre, except I've seen her grind. In the indoor season, she made those races, even ones, you know, where Jess Hull, former teammate of mine, had outkicked her. She came back to grind it out in other races as well. She's just a gritty athlete and tough, and so here she is out front. It looks like, you know, if she wants to get this time, it's going to be all her with no help.
You know, one of the big stories in track and field this week was everybody watching the decisions and the declarations in the regional structure of the NCAA. I think the whole declaration process going into the trials is going to be fascinating as well, because, again, if we are in this golden era, there are so many women who are sort of in that point where they think they could make a final. They maybe get themselves, like a Christian Smith, into the games as a surprise, but you kind of have to wait until the big names decide what they're going to do, and there is still some decisions to be made by some of those women.
Absolutely. And a lot of times, too, that double of the 15.5K is something that's so impactful, too. It's
maybe, aside from the 1-2, the most popular double, because they're competing in completely separate halves of the trials. Again, the trials for the U.S. is split up into 2 4-day periods. The first 4 days, a 2-day rest period, and then the second 4 days. Correct me if I'm wrong, Shannon, the 5,000 meters will be contested in the first half of the trials and the 15 in the second. So you got athletes like Ellie St. Pierre where, gosh, this competing in the 5K wouldn't be a consolation, right? She'd need to punch her ticket to Paris, and that's 25 laps of running before you run your first round of the 1500. Yes, Paul, I do think that unlike the NCAA, we don't have the honest effort rule in the professional ranks, and so you may have a lot of athletes who declare in an event and then ultimately don't show up for the starting line, which I think is a bit of a shame in the sport, honestly, because it prevents another athlete from having that opportunity. But at the end of the day, this isn't an all-comers meet, right? The Olympic trials is just that. It's a chance to represent Team USA at the Olympic Games, and so if you hold that spot is yours and yours alone, how you want to use it. But we'll see how many athletes choose to come back in the 1500.
So a little bit of separation now from the top 4 and the rest of the field with 6 laps to run here at UCLA. This is the top section of the women's 5,000. We'll have 2 more 5,000s to follow here, but we put these A races kind of tight into the window, and hopefully everybody watching on the East Coast, we can almost tell you happy Saturday morning as we near 9 p.m. here local time, midnight on the East Coast, and I'm sure a lot of East Coasters all the way up into Maine and Vermont are going to be cheering Ellie St. Pierre on as she gears up for this quick time, and she's a little bit ahead of those pace lights now as they come through again. They'll have 3,000 meters complete when they reach the line, and the first kilometer was 2:58.44. Second kilometer, 2:58.73. Those are the splits by St. Pierre. The Venezuelan Brea having a nice run here. National record holder at the 1500, the mile, and the 5,000. Was the Pan American Games champion last year at both 1500 and 5,000 meters. And then Whitney Morgan, who actually has the U.S. lead in this event at 15:06:11, trying to remain in contact. She's right with those lights, but the quick pace in front as they went through 2:57:34, fastest K of the race.
Absolutely. And you know what, Paul, you just brought something up that I think I need to comment on. It's almost midnight on the East Coast.
You are a commentator.
It's 9 o'clock here on the West Coast, and people might be asking, why do we run races so late? Well, if I look up above me, there are the pine needles of these beautiful trees on UCLA campus. They are dead still. The temperatures are cool. The wind is non-existent. This is a lightning fast track, and the task that World Athletics and the International Olympic Committee have asked these athletes to accomplish, to just tick that first box of qualification, is immense, and it is so hard to do that you have to set these things up absolutely perfectly. And Ellie St. Pierre right now is doing an absolutely fantastic job of showing the rest of this field this is what an Olympic qualifier looks like, as there are two women that are miles ahead of the rest of this field.
You know, as I look at the U.S. athletes that have the qualifying time, you know, going back to that potential double, and historically we have had scenarios where the 15 was maybe first and the 5K could be after. In this Olympic trial scenario, where all the way back at the beginning of the broadcast, Paul was talking about the simulation of the Olympics, right? And the importance of having our athletes go through the rounds like they would at the Olympic Games. Now these athletes have the 5K at first for women if they want to be considering a double with the 15. And in the U.S., you know, our leader was Alicia Monson, who unfortunately has a knee injury and won't be competing, which leaves only Josette Andrews and Ellie Hennis, as well as Courtney Wyman with the time. Eleanor Purrier tonight will hopefully be another one to add to that list, but it isn't a deep field yet of women in the U.S. in the 5K who have the qualifying standard. And so exciting to see her out far in front of the pace lights with only 3 laps remaining in this race.
Well, don't forget about Whitney Morgan, who's now chasing those lights, and that's kind of all that she has in the way of help here, because the leaders, St. Pierre and Brea of Venezuela, are reaching the line with 3 laps to go.
So the green lights, just to remind the fans, that's 14:52 if I'm not mistaken. That is the Olympic qualifying pace. But again, what's crazy to me again, Paul, this is why I keep saying golden age. An absolute thundering horde of women just crossed the common finish line, and they're right around 15-minute pace. That used to be a barrier, Shannon,
yeah.
when you were running. Only a handful of women in the U.S. ever had gone under 15 minutes, and now there's about 15 Americans seemingly in this race that are about to do it tonight.
And that light at 15:10 is the Olympic trials qualifying standard, with a host of Americans ahead of that light as well, and we'll follow them all the way through to the finish. But meantime, the racing up front, as Ellie St. Pierre driving this thing, and Brea's stuck right with her. Brea's lifetime best 14:47.76. So definitely on pace for something special here. St. Pierre, sort of a pedestrian 14:58, on her way to shattering that mark, and we'll keep an eye on that all-time top 10 list by Americans. Again, Munson with that blistering 14:19.45 American record not in play, but lots of names on that list of all-time greats at 5,000 meters. Getting a little bit nervous watching Ellie St. Pierre cover these last 2 laps.
She is getting stalked right now by Jocelyn Brea.
What a dream scenario, right?
Yeah, Jocelyn Brea is not letting a whiff of wind get between her and Ellie St. Pierre, and they're just clawing their way to some lightning fast times. If again, just quick math, Ellie would need to run about a 1:55 last 800 to attack that American record. That might be off the table tonight, but again, what are these athletes coming here to do? They're coming to run their Olympic qualifying times. They are absolutely going to accomplish that, barring some unforeseen circumstances. But right now, we have Ellie St. Pierre. She put the glasses on. I said this earlier, if you put the glasses on, you got to win the race.
She always has the glasses on.
That's
and she's
okay.
Just been winning those races.
Well, we go back just a few months ago in Glasgow, when up against the best in the world, Ellie St. Pierre drove home to her first ever world indoor title. Now just a little bit of separation between her and Brea, and she hits the line at 3:30 with a lap to go.
I mean, the story of this race with Ellie leading the entire thing once the pacer dropped off, and then once she hit the 3K mark, started hitting 69s, then 69, then 69, then 67, separating herself now from Brea as she goes into the final 300. Brea trying to see if she can keep any sort of closeness, but it's that speed, 1,500 meter comparison. Ellie St. Pierre sub 4 significantly, and Brea a 4:07 personal best. So over these final meters, it's all St. Pierre.
You have got to be kidding me right now. If I'm a 5K runner, or even worse, a 1,500 meter runner, right now I am shaking in my boots at the fitness that Ellie St. Pierre is showing us.
Well, Brea still giving up a pretty good fight here coming off the final turn, but Ellie St. Pierre in the twilight of a city of stars remains the brightest star in American distance running as she will cross the line in a shade over 14:34 as she will become the number 5 all-time in American history in 5,000s, one spot ahead of Shannon Robury.
Good work, St. Pierre. I love to see it.
Now officially 14:34.12. So it's Munson, Houlihan, Schweitzer, Cranny, and St. Pierre. And just note that Cranny's mark was an indoor mark, so number 4 outdoors all time. And Brea with a fabulous run, shattering her own personal best and national record for Venezuela by more than 10 seconds. And a PB train just starting to populate on our information system here. Nuttall with a PB. Donahue goes sub 15 with a PB. And Abby Nichols, Bethany Hosh. Again, a classic night at the Distance Classic.
I mean, obviously, Ellie St. Pierre showed us that she was a class of the field with 2 laps to go. I was getting a little bit nervous at how close Jocelyn Brea was clocking her. And knowing that she has 14:47 chops, I mean, they were sort of right in that zone. And then with 400 meters to go, we saw the crack. And all it took was a crack, which became a chasm, right? And as Ellie just charged away. And what was her closing split, Shannon? I think you had the 400s up there.
We got 63 for the final split, for the final 400.
3 seconds for the final lap. Absolutely incredible running. She did the glasses proud.
31.6 over the last 200.
Yep.
Did the glasses proud.
And St.